everyone connected. So we are very happy to welcome you on this webinar. We are not going to do introduction of everyone because the team is very large and with a very good participation from all stakeholders, representative stakeholders. We have prepared this webinar within EASA team, ATM department, to give a bit of, let's say, heads up of some information that has been recently published on the EASA website with an ATM ANS equipment page, and that you might have discovered. And we wanted to explain a bit, let's say, the approach and what has been published. We wanted this webinar to be focused, so it's really targeted to DPOs, so design and production organization in the ATM context. José Luis, who is connected, will also help us to present the webinar all together. So we can, let's say, review first the agenda just for people to know. So we have done participant connection. We will start with a topic which is starting from the certificate and going upwards. What do we have on a certificate, and explain attestation basis, certification basis, the relation with the part number, the minor changes. It will be an overview. Then we will look at the EASA equipment certification process and where we interact. We have some interaction with the DPOs. It will be followed by the overview of the registration process and of the equipment declaration, here declaration of design compliance, where EASA has the role to register. We will organize a break to help you have a breathe in the middle of this set of presentation. Then we will switch to the introduction of certification program, declaration of design performance, then declaration of design compliance, and the SOC templates. So we will then follow with some introduction of our workshop that is upcoming in June, where we will spend more time. It will be a 2 days workshop in-house, so in-person workshop, where we will have more time to go deeper on all those topics that will be, let's say, overviewed today. At the end, we have a short question and answer session. For that, we have prepared a Slido, let's say, page for you to post the questions. We want to say up front that the webinar is not the real good form to raise, let's say, to answer questions, but we would like, obviously, you to raise the questions and get any feedback if needed to help us prepare the workshop in June. And so we would invite you to take already now the code. You can either use the QR code and then need to enter the webinar code, just the passcode webinar in short letters, in small letters, or you can use the link that is there shown on the let's say on the full link here. So we give you a bit of time to do a picture of this and to connect to the Slido. But we apologize in advance that we will not be able to run all the Q&A at the end of this WebEx, but we will try, if time allows, we will try to tackle some of them, and we will prepare some, let's say, some of these questions would help us prepare the workshop in June. So now I switch to the first presentation. So in the first presentation here, we will cover the from ANS certificate. and see, let's say, connect the different articles of the regulation 2023 1768 and connect the different articles together. In this presentation, so we will cover certificate, certification basis, attestation basis. We will talk of the newly introduced taxonomy for detailed specification, few words on deviation and the process, and then the part number and anticipated minor changes. So you have here a picture of the template certificate that we filled with some, let's say, example names. And you see how a certificate will look like for an ATM ANS equipment. And we go through the certificate. So you see the certificate will have a number. So it's an EASA reference, a certificate number, and that will use also will use the project numbering to make the reference in the certificate. We have the DPO name. So the DPO will be the organization that applied to EASA for this certificate and is design and responsible for design and production of the equipment. Just to let you know that the DPO needs to be approved at the time of certification. So when we issue the certificate, the DPO needs to be approved a priori. Then we have, per the 1768, we have an equipment designation. In 1768, you see that the equipment designation needs two information. One is a model name, which is a generic model name that covers the part number that is associated to the equipment. The model name stands for the full, let's say, part number and its minor changes. So we need to keep the same model name for the minor changes. Then we have the certification basis. So in this certificate, you see that the certificate is issued by EASA and acting in accordance with the basic regulation and subject to the conditions below. And the third basis will be here the detailed specification that is applicable to this equipment as presented by the DPO. And on the certificate will appear the certification basis. You see here that we put the issue of the detailed specs, but we will have a certain taxonomy to reference all the functions that are in the DS, and that will be, let's say, on the certificate. Here I did a zoom for those to read the details of an example here of a detail spec. For the taxonomy, we will come back in a later mode to the taxonomy that we use to reference the different functions that are in the DS. But the next detail spec, the new issue of detail specs, will contain directly the taxonomy inside the detail spec. In case the applicant, the DPO applicant, has requested deviations to the applicable detail spec, so the applicable third basis, then the deviations need to be a priori approved by EASA, and those approved deviations will have a certain reference on the EASA website. And on the certificate, we will see the list of approved deviation that the applicant, DPO applicant, has elected to comply with the third basis amended by the deviation. The reference of here you see a DDP number. So DDP is a document that is introduced in our 1768, not with this name. but with a notion of final document. So we will come back on the DDP, but the DDP means Declaration of Design Performance. This is a final document issued by the DPO at the time of certification, and which will refer to let's say, all the evidence of demonstration of compliance. So the DDP number is important, and the revision, and we will come back on it, but this figures on the certificate because it's a signed document by the DPO organization that the equipment complies with the attestation, with the cert basis. And last, we have a specific identification of limitations. Limitations are introduced in 1768. They could be specific conditions for compliance, and they, let's say, this can be when we have equivalent level of safety brought by a deviation argument, or more, or limitation to be installed in a given context. This will be identified as limitations. The limitations are stated inside the Declaration of Design Performance brought by the applicant. So sometimes in the certificate, if the limitations are too wordy, let's say too long to write, we would refer to the Declaration of Design Performance as a chapter. So this is introducing, let's say, the certificate. So we started by the end to show how EASA is going to reflect and to connect the different articles, and at the end bring a certificate. Now looking at still an overview, but looking at the flow. We start with an equipment that a design and production organization would elect to certify. So this starts at EASA, the DPO applicant shows and explains the model name, part number, and needs to describe what is inside that equipment. The list of functions are identified. Then we can collectively identify, so from the applicant, identify the elected certification basis, and from an EASA standpoint, to agree on the certification basis with the DPO applicant. Then the DPO demonstrates compliance to the cert basis along the certification project, and at the end, EASA issues a certificate. In the context of 1768-1769 regulation, the DPO organization may anticipate provision for minor changes, and this needs to be upfront explained to EASA, and this anticipation of minor changes are explained from the beginning of the program, of the project, I would say. So then if we transfer this in more generic term, we were in the certification context. Now let's take the broad picture of the full conformity assessment attestation. Here in the conformity attestation, if we cover then a certificate, but also declaration of design compliance and SOC per Article 4, 5, and 6 of the regulation, we have, let's say, somehow the same concept. The difference is where do we have interaction with EASA. So the applicant, in the case of DPO, we will have, let's say, in the case of Article 4 and 5, we will need a DPO approval, and it's a DPO that goes for declaration of design compliance, or goes for certification. But we start with a model name and a part number to describe the equipment. The initiator of the attestation would list the functions that are embedded into the equipment. So this list needs to be present in the attestation. Then with this list of functions, the attestation basis can be defined, meaning what are the applicable detailed specification that applies to this equipment. And then the demonstration of compliance to this attestation basis is, let's say, is performed to then be let the signatories to be in the attestation and to sign the attestation and to have it released. So at the end, the attestation, in case of declaration of design compliance, is issued by a DPO. And in the case of SOC, can be an ANSP, or if the ANSP delegate to the DPO, it can be issued by the DPO. Now let's look to the more deeper to the definition of the certification basis and the attestation basis. So in the context of Article 4, we will speak of certification basis. And Article 4 equipment of the 7068 regulation requires an EASA certificate. So as we just said, the equipment is described with a list of embedded functions. The list of embedded functions is described typically in a certification program. But the certification basis will be already defined at the time of the application. In the certification basis, how do we define it? So it's actually all the detailed specification sections that are applicable to the listed functions, plus the applicable general section. We need, in the definition of the certification basis, we need to reference the issue of the detailed specification that is applicable at time of application. So today, the detailed specification is at issue 1. So of course, this is not, let's say, there is no much debate on what is the applicable detailed specification. But imagine in 10 years when we would have, for instance, six issues of the DS. How does it work? It works at the time of application. Then the detailed spec is applicable is the one that is issued at the time of application, the one that is applicable at time of application. Here, a small diagram to explain in the long life. Imagine that we have a detailed spec that the application occurred while we were at issue 1 of the detailed specification. And imagine that the certification project lasts more than, let's say, 2 years, then we would have a detailed spec probably issue 2 already. And then the applicable detailed specification is the one at time of application, so the issue 1. Nevertheless, it's always possible on voluntary basis of the DPO holder, on his deliberate choice, the DPO holder may prefer to elect to comply to a later issue of the detailed specification. And then the DPO could elect to comply and to change the detailed spec issue to the issue 2, for instance. Now, let's come to an example on how to define the certification basis. For instance, a voice communication system. So we go to the detailed spec. The detailed spec applicable for voice communication system is a DSGE -DEC. In this document, you would have a part 1 that is general, applicable to all the equipment in certain DEC. And we have a part 2 that is for certification. And inside the part 2, we have a subpart B on air ground com, and then a section 2 voice communication. So the applicable sub-basis would be the part 1, the generic, and The one in referencing the voice communication system. So we go to part 2. If there would be a gen applicable, would have a gen, and they would have a generic. And then go to the section 2, where the voice communication function is depicted in requirements and AMCs. So this is an example for a single function into the equipment, just the voice communication system function inside that equipment. In case of multiple functions, all the detail spec sections that are applicable to the listed functions are defining the third basis associated with their general section. Here we have identified a case where the functions go for, there is a function that goes under certification, Article 4. So of course there is an application to a certification project at EASA. But then if this equipment also contains functions that are part of declaration, so Article 5, or part of SOC functions in the detail spec, then we need to identify them in the attestation basis in the equipment. By this, we want that the equipment functionalities are well depicted in the certification project and as part of a meaningful set of functions together, working together, and also to guarantee that there is no alternate, let's say, function that could impair the certified function. That's the main logic, main idea behind this. But so we want that the certification basis, then the attestation basis, is complete and well defined into the certification program to cover all the functions embedded. They will be part of the final declaration document, the DDP document as well. In such case, we have one equipment part number with one model name, and this equipment part number model name from this DPO can only go for one single attestation, meaning because it contains a certification function, let's say an Article 4 function, then it needs to go through the certification declaration, and then we don't need an additional declaration of design compliance or an additional SOC for the other functions. So one single attestation for one equipment part number issued by that same DPO. Having said that, the certificate will cover the full set of functions. It doesn't mean that the EASA certifies the declaration and the SOC function. It just means that it will be present and referenced. It will reflect the existence of the other functions. And we want to say that the EASA level of involvement will be commensurate to the type of functions, meaning that the level of involvement will be adequate to the published regulation. Switching now to the case of declaration of design compliance context. So let's take the case of an equipment that has a function that is per Article 5 of 1768. Then the applicable certification basis is detailed in detail specification subdeck. So here we start with the same message. The equipment has a described list of functions inside the declaration of design compliance. The attestation basis that needs to be within the declaration will be the one referring to all the applicable detail specification sections that are applicable to the listed functions plus the general section. Here, which issue of the DS is applicable? It's the one that is applicable at the date of the declaration of design compliance submission. So, in other words, if we have also in the equipment SOC functions, And if they are inside, then we need to identify them in the attestation basis of the Declaration of Design Compliance. So again, one part number, one model name for that equipment contains several functions. We have only one unique attestation. It will be the Declaration of Design Compliance because it contains functions that are part of Article 5 equipment. And EASA will make the registration of the Declaration of Design Compliance, and it will cover all the equipment functions. So no need for extra statement of compliance by the DPO. We have only one attestation for one equipment part number of that DPO. Now let's go to the SOC context. So in the SOC context, you see at the bottom, we don't identify DPO because the SOC is issued by ANSP or may be issued by the DPO in case the DPO has been delegated the task by the ANSP. So in the case of SOC context, here it's only functions that require an SOC. They cannot be embedded certification or declaration functions within an SOC. Otherwise, it would be an Article 4 or an Article 5 equipment. The attestation basis would be all the detail spec sections that are applicable to the listed functions. So here we look at DS SOC, and we apply the general section of DS SOC. And it will be the attestation basis that is applicable at the date of the SOC release. The attestation is issued by the ANSP or by delegated DPO. In this case, there is one attestation to cover the equipment PN by one organization. So in this case, each ANSP issues its SOC for that model PN. So in that case, an ANSP would issue one single ANSP would issue one time the SOC for that model and part number. And in the case it's issued by DPO, it's only one SOC that can be issued by the DPO for the same model name part number. Let's move now to the specific situation of deviation has been requested. What happens to the certification basis? So in the 1768, we have extracted here the article that speak about the certification program, and that inside the initial certification basis, there is a possibility to propose deviation. We will have some further slide about the generic process of the deviation, but we want to identify that the deviations will follow a certain process that will be subject to EASA approval, but the deviations, when approved, to the applicable detail specification, those deviations to applicable detail specification and their ANC, they are in a manner amending the applicable cert basis. So the cert basis will be the applicable detail specification together with the associated deviation. Both together reflect what the equipment shall comply with. We will come back on the process for deviation in the other presentation of the process. So this finished the presentation of the certification attestation basis. And now we would like to switch to the topic under, let's say, that talks about the part number and the associated design changes in relation with the certification attestation basis. José Luis?
Yes. Should I take over the slides because they are animated, so maybe it's easier if I do it.
If you like.
Yes, so let's see if it works. I'm sharing my screen. Do you see the slides now?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe worth to mention, because I'm checking some of the questions in the Slido and also on the chat. Please bear in mind that I mean, Anne mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is to explain the current material published. So basically, some templates and some concepts, but it's helping us to build the material and to build the questions for the workshop in June. So some of the questions are, I mean, all are very relevant, but some of them we will not address today. We are addressing in the workshop. But in any case, we appreciate very much all the questions, even though sometimes are a little bit off of the material we are presenting today. But in any case, very appreciated about that. We will take over during the workshop. Here, what I'm presenting is not these elements, but is the relationship between these elements: part number, certification basis, or more generally, attestation basis, and the minor design changes. Because the relation between these three elements are not very clear in the current material, and they are fundamental. The three elements are related and are depending on each other. And so that's the purpose of the next set of slides, because I think that you understand, when you understand this relationship, you will understand some of the purpose of some requirements in the regulation. Okay, so let's go for it. So design changes and the certification basis described in the regulation 1768. Here I'm focusing on Article 4, type of equipment, so equipment that is subject to certification. So in the certification, what was presented by Anne, you have these three elements identified and registered in the certificate. So you have the part number, and actually we will see that this part number covers all the minor changes that are anticipated by the DPO. So when a minor change is introduced, the certificate covers that minor change and does not need to be reissued if that minor change has been anticipated in the, as I mentioned before, certification program and the DDP. But I will go with the details later. The certification basis is also referred into the certificate, so it's captured here in the with the taxonomy that we recently have published. So basically, with the list of requirements that are in the detailed specifications and additional requirements if are accepted as the certification basis. The other element that I mentioned are the minor changes. So the minor changes are it's a privilege to introduce these minor changes to the equipment design when the DPO is approved. This is recognized in the regulation 1768. Here I copy the regulation text, certificate. Requirement cert 060. So you have the legal reference. I saw also some questions about what is the minor or major changes. We are not going today enter into this distinction, but basically the main concept behind the minor changes is when you don't need to do a re-verification of the design. There are some conditions, some criteria in the AMC. We will not go through them today, but just the concept that the minor change need to be in your head. We will discuss the borders between the minor and major during the workshop. Don't worry about that, but what we want to stress today is that the minor changes are covered by the certificate, so no need of a new certification of the equipment. But let's see how these minor changes need to be captured, need to be described. So again, well, the first thing is that when we approve the DPO, when we give the approval of the DPO and we check the procedures, we check that the DPO has a procedure or a system in place to classify the changes as minor and major. As I said, criteria to define this minor and major are in our ANC, but the DPO has also to describe this into their own terms, into their own equipment. So these criteria need to apply there. So we check this process, we approve this process, and once this process is approved, then the privilege of the DPO to classify changes as minor or major is there. In any case, these minor changes need to be described in this procedure. But normally this procedure doesn't capture all the low-level details of the minor changes. So when these minor changes are anticipated, so basically are captured in the process and also approved by EASA, the process, these minor changes are also or need to be captured in the part number scheme. Basically, the part numbering should have certain digits that are dedicated to identify those minor changes that has been anticipated into the process. And for that reason, because the part number is captured in the certificate covers all the minor changes. But that's why it's important that the minor changes need to be anticipated and also cover into the part numbering scheme. When this is done, then well, the DPO in the regulation you have you find obligations to notify these minor changes, but these minor changes can be notified a posteriori. We will see later this morning how these minor changes are registered. Because we have suggested that these minor changes being registered into the templates of the declarations, the declaration of design performance, the DDP, or the declaration of design compliance, the DDC. But we will see that later. But just keep in mind that that is the way we are proposing to register these minor changes. Maybe worth here to say or to mention that when there are minor changes that haven't been anticipated, this should be follow the process as if it were a major change, just submitting to EASA, analyze, and then accept as a minor change. And then in the future, that minor change would be incorporated into the certificate and into the part numbering scheme. So how to anticipate the minor change here? I'm going to repeat again probably what I have said, but I think visually will help us to understand and to grasp the concept. So sorry, the classification procedure. So the procedure is a mandatory procedure by the regulation. So the DPO will have this procedure to identify all changes that they do into the design of the equipment as minor and major. This procedure is approved by EASA during the approval of the DPO. However, normally this procedure will not be detailed enough for its specific equipment to identify all or to anticipate all the minor changes. That's why during the certification, when the DPO, when the applicant submit the certification program, initially the certification programs, and at the end of the compliance demonstration, the DDP, the Declaration of Design Performance, in both documents, the description, the detailed description of the anticipated minor changes need to be described, need to be captured, need to be stated. And this description has also to be linked to the part number scheme. So basically, the part number will be a set of digits that will capture these minor changes. Let me go to one particular example here. So normally we are proposing and I know that this is not yet in the ANC guidance. Of course, we will publish all this in the guidance that we will issue during summer. But this is the explanation of the concept behind that. The digits, so the part number need to basically provide some digits for capturing the minor changes, as I mentioned. The way we are proposing is the use of brackets. So, for example, here B12345A, that would be the part number or a particular design with 3 elements here that are generic digits, X, Y, and double Z, each one dedicated to a type of minor changes. So, for example, X may be dedicated to minor software patches of that particular equipment. Y maybe some minor changes dedicated, I don't know, to minor changes into the hardware, and double Z, some additional minor changes may be required by the user, by the ANSP, I don't know, such as colors or things like that. But this will need to be explained by the applicant initially into the certification program, and later into the DDP. In that way, the part number that is captured in the certificate covers all the minor changes, as I mentioned. So, whereas this relationship between the minor changes, the classification procedures, and the certificate is very important. You know that in the regulation, minor changes need to be communicated to EASA, but a posteriori. So it's the privilege of the DPO to introduce, and is covered by the certificate. This can be also extended to the other attestation methods, to the declaration, and to the statement of compliance as well. So I think that the next couple of slides just reiterate again these concepts and summarize again. So when these minor changes are anticipated by the DPO at the initial certification, bear in mind that this is also kind of extended to the declaration and the SOC. The certificate, the certificate indicates the model for the initial certification and a part number scheme with those provisions for the minor changes. That is a privilege of the DPO when it's approved by EASA to perform these minor changes, and these minor changes need to be described in more detail in the DDP and approved when EASA issues the certificate. So if there are certain minor changes that are not being anticipated at the time of the initial certification. Those minor changes that are not being anticipated will need a priori approval of EASA, because are not captured in the part number scheme and therefore are not covered initially by the certificate. So typically, this will require a priori before implementing the change, and typically will require an update of the initial certificate. This update will be basically limited to the part number scheme, but need to be updated. That's why requires a priori approval. Of course, if we are talking of a major change, that requires a new certification project with a different model name, different part number scheme, etc. So again, as a summary, minor change, use the same certification basis and the original, and there is no update. There is no upgrade of that original certification basis. Major changes need to apply for a new certificate, and of course, in that moment, it takes the new certification basis of the detailed specifications. Here, a clarification that if there is any change on the certification basis, that is classified as a major, and because it is considered that a significant effort to perform all reinvestigation of compliance need to be performed. For the declaration, the concept is similar, the approach is similar. Of course, there are a few differences. Okay, first, this is governed by the regulation in a different place. So the requirement is DEC 020, where you can find that there are major and minor changes. But here in the declaration, we don't have a certification program, because the intervention of EASA is not happening at the beginning, but at the end, when the equipment is declared. Again, the concept is similar in the sense that EASA approves the same procedure or approves the procedure to identify minor and major changes. The major changes still requires a new declaration, still requires a new model designation to the equipment and a new part numbering scheme. The minor changes does not require that. Those minor changes anticipated are covered by the initial declaration of design compliance and will not require a new one. And as in the same case as in the certification, we will see later when we check the templates how these minor changes that has been anticipated for the declaration will be registered. We are proposing to be registered in the DDC itself. And as I mentioned, that's the privilege of the DPO when EASA approved the procedures. More in practice, these procedures to identify minor and major classification are captured in the definition of minor and major are captured in the procedure, but normally this is as in the case of the certification, normally we are not expecting to have all the details in this procedure, but the main details of the anticipated minor changes will be described in the DDC. So in the declaration of design compliance. Remember that in the certification case, we have this detailed explanation of the minor changes anticipated, first in the CP, certification program, later in the DDP, the declaration of design performance. In the case of declaration, this will only be captured in the DDC, in the declaration of design compliance. And again, when there is a minor change anticipated, the DPO introduced this minor change. This is captured, this is registered in the DDC, so it's only a new update of the DDC, but the DDC issue number remains the same. So it's not a new declaration, but a new update of that particular declaration. And that's from the time being. I recognize that you may have some questions, so please use the Slido. Also, please hold on with us because some of your questions may be answered later when we see the template as well. So I'm back to you, Anne. Also to mention that at the end of this presentation, you will find a list of acronyms. I see a few questions about that. I do recognize we are using a lot of acronyms, and I apologize for that because some of them are new to you. But okay, little by little, everyone we will get familiar with them. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, José Luis. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Good. So we switch to the second topic. The second topic is the overview of the ATM ANS equipment certification process. So this is from an EASA standpoint, and EASA in relation to the DPO applicant who would have applied for the certification process for his equipment. So in this presentation, we will cover the overview of the process from the application to the certificate. We will cover the key milestones, the key exchange, and some info about the DPO and EASA data and interactions. This will be covered, let's say, through the slides, all grouped together. So what is the certification project? So the certification project here is 4 big steps. the first thing is to understand that the DPO initiates the project, and its deliveries are sequencing the project. So it starts by an application form, the form 00167, that is filled by the DPO and sent to EASA. And then the EASA open a certification project. So in the EASA system, we have an application service inside the RS department of EASA, the RS directorate of EASA, and this application service deals with all the applications inside the EASA. So this form needs to be filled, and then they open a certification project and transfer it to the ATM department. We have a certification program that is delivered typically right after the application form, and the DPO would send the certification program, and EASA would assess its content. The certification program, we will cover it in the later presentation in terms of templates, but it's an essential document on which DPO and EASA are agreeing on let's say every sections. It finished from the other job finished by the acceptance of the CP of the sub-program, and we identify our initial level of involvement, and we notify it to the DPO applicant. Then starts the big job of the DPO to make the development process of the equipment, and also submit evidence of the demonstration of compliance along the development of the equipment, and this is submitted to EASA, and we will a bit explain on which form, but let's say on which platform. And then EASA, along the project, will assess and provide feedback on the key milestones. And then we reach the end when we have a complete demonstration of compliance to all the certification bases. And then the DPO finally delivers his signed declaration of design performance that states that the equipment conforms or is compliant to the applicable certification basis. And this DDP is scrutinized by EASA for acceptance, and then EASA is in position to release a certificate. One word about the schedule. So the schedule, so the applicant often has his certification project, one or a bit more, but EASA has many, so the schedule should account for time for EASA to assess, and also should account for some iterations, especially that we are at the start of the conformity attestation and of the applying the regulation. There is a learning curve to expect, and this is let's say a warning. Having said that, then we mentioned the initial level of involvement. So today we want to indicate that today it's high, because level of involvement cannot count for experience from the DPO side to manipulate the regulation properly. And so there is a typical high at the start for the first projects that will, let's say, in the future, when applicant comes with major change, it will be, of course, a bit different. But at the very first time, we don't expect much discussion there. So now zooming a bit in the steps at start. So DPO comes with an application form. So applicant service will assess this form for its completeness, and the DPO applicant will receive a notification if the application for the project is well received. So it's a preliminary acceptance from the applicant service, and then they open a project. This first response is an acknowledgement of the forms more than an agreement on the third basis, for instance. It's agreeing that the form is complete and that it's okay to start a certification project. And then this project is transferred to ATM department, where the ATM department will nominate what we call in our terms a certification project manager, project certification manager. I'll read the letter. It's an ATM PCM, so from the ATM department. The PCM, just to state that it becomes a point of contact with the applicant for the certification project. The PCM doesn't deal with the billing, the billing of EASA or the specs, the first specs in opening the projects, receiving application, but it starts immediately after and becomes a point of contact with the applicant for the demonstration of compliance and the issuing of the certificate. So I was saying that right after the applicant has sent a form, we expect to have a certification program. This sometimes needs first a technical familiarization, so before signing or right after, to have a familiarization between the EASA and the DPO organization on the equipment itself, what does it contain, how the survey has been established. So there is a possibility of a familiarization meeting that is needed, and depending on the complexity also of the equipment. But this is, let's say, at the time of sending the cert program, it could be that we have a familiarization meeting. We notify the notion of PCM, so the one is the official point of contact of the applicant. Of course, the EASA team would be bigger depending on the project, depending on the technical specificities of the project. We will require further expertise to help assessing the demonstration of compliance. We promise one word on the taxonomy. So the sub-program needs to state the DS function. The application form needs to state the DS function that are applicable to the equipment. Just to explain in short the taxonomy that we have inferred to make an easy reference of a long title that is in the detailed specification, and that is good to be as precise as possible in the detailed specification, but for which we want to have a taxonomy to have an easier use of the certification context. Declaration and SOC as well will profit from this taxonomy. And so we have imagined that we have three letters to start with, then followed by the function, so 3 letters, CER, DEC, or SOC. Then we imagine 4 letters to define the functionality. So for instance, flight data processing in DS CER DEC will become AFDP. So A is put when we have ATM, we put an extra fourth letter for the FDP, so it stands for ATM flight data processing. And we also add a revision V. So this will help us imagine in issue 5 of DS, if the flight data processing is still at the first, the content is exactly the same that was in issue 1, then it's a way for us to identify the revisions of the requirements linked to a given section. So we will have an issue that is identified for each function, high-level function declared in the DS. So if the requirements linked to flight data processing are updated only at the time of issue 5 of the DS, then we will update the taxonomy to CER.AFDP.2 in the issue 5, meaning that the release certificate that we have shown before, that would be released for all the time in between, they will refer to FDP.1. And then we will be able in 10 years time frame, for instance, to check that this certificate was issued based on the requirements of FDP.1, which means these requirements and this acceptable means of compliance. So that's the way, let's say, we have imagined the taxonomy to be able in the detail spec to know how requirements are moving per section. This taxonomy will be introduced in the issue 2 of the detail spec. And it's already available on the EASA website. We published it so that people can already use it. And it's also already present in the application form. We switch to the next step, so where the DPO has the job to establish the compliance of the equipment to the third basis. And there, EASA would assess and feedback. So there is, especially at the time of initiating the full conformity assessment framework, there is a time to have an agreement that the DPO present how he wants to demonstrate at the time of issuing the sub-program and agreeing, and also how we will regroup evidences together, like with meaningful set. For instance, that we have a group that is demonstrating software assurance, another group demonstrating compliance to industry standard XYZ, or development plans for the equipment. So this will be, let's say, agreed together between the DPO present this set of data, and there is a collective, let's say, understanding also to, well, let's say, communicate the data package between the DPO and the EASA. So the EASA will identify the means of involvement, will say when it will be by review, desk review, or when it will be via audits, sampling audits. So this will be clarified at that time. Then the EASA assessment is typically fed back to the DPO. And this feedback, so of the DPO, I will come back on which form. But so we have, we typically have a compliance matrix that is delivered by the DPO for EASA to understand the demonstration approach of the applicant, and will support the regrouping of evidences and to, let's say, make the work of demonstration and the work of assessing more efficient. We have debated internally to have a final decision that we will use the CEPIAC tool. So the CEPIAC is a tool to exchange and record data. This tool already exists in the airworthiness side. It's just a SharePoint-based tool. But that tool already contains some, let's say, a lot of efficient ways to communicate with the applicant, and we will, let's say, just have some specific fields for the ATM domain. But EASA management have decided to use the same tool, and this will be needed to explain for each DPO to have a certain training on the tool and to have an exchange on it. So this tool is under finalization. Let's say the adaptation of the few metadata for the tool are ongoing today and will be communicated with to each DPO, and training slides and training possibilities will be identified. But again, it's a SharePoint-based tool, so typically not that complex, but there is some very specific points for the exchange. Associating with the tool, inside the tool, you will see DPO applicants submitting data, EASA assessing, could feedback inside the tool, but the official feedback will also happen via email, that the email will notify the applicant that this feedback has been proposed, or this feedback is available in CEPIAC, or this feedback is within the email content. So just like to let you know that we will we typically use the email chain to notify things. Just last but not least, just to let the DPO understanding that we have a duty to manage our archive and records. And in the context of ATM certification project, the application form, the certification program from the applicant, the declaration of design performance at the end of the project by the DPO applicant, and finally the certificate constitute the EASA records. The other lifecycle data will be used during the project, potentially archived, but do not constitute formally the record. So just to stress that for us, the application form is very important, the sub-program is very important, it's the planning, and the DDP is a final declaration, is really a rigorous document that will support the release of a certificate. Few words on the deviations. So the deviations are deviations to the applicable certification basis. So typically, they would be deviations requested to deviate from the detail spec requirement or deviations to the AMC to the detail spec requirement. So the process in place would be that the applicant formally requests for deviation to the applicable sub basis. It can be at the time of sub-program when the applicant already knows. So it can identify the title of the deviation request, let's say the headline of the deviation request. But it could also happen that along the demonstration of compliance, exercising a certain DS requirement, the applicant could see the need to request deviation and to get an EASA agreement on that. In both cases, a deviation request comes with some arguments, and we have identified those like a technical letter from the DPO to request the deviation and provide the arguments or an alternate requirements when he doesn't want to elect to comply to certain requirements. Typically would have an alternate requirement. And the applicant the DPO needs to bring justification that it can reach equivalent level of safety for the deviation. So equivalent level of safety compared to as if he would apply the said requirement, the requirement in question. So the technical letter is essential to elaborate on the arguments. The technical letter will be the support for EASA to investigate what are the, let's say, the rationale, what is the problem that is under, let's say, the deviation requested, and how to accompany this deviation with an equivalent level of safety, if it's appropriate or not. So it could be that EASA investigates completely and then propose a disposition. EASA accepts or rejects the deviation, but that is still a proposal. The deviation will be then published on the EASA website to get comments from all stakeholders that are willing to comment on this deviation request. This allows EASA to get other opinion and to get other feedback on the EASA assessment or on the, let's say, on the deviation requested, on the equivalent level of safety formulated by the DPO, but as well on the EASA acceptance or rejects of the deviation. We publish the deviation request. We don't publish the technical letter. The technical letter is from the DPO and could contain some essential preparatory information that belongs only to the DPO holder and its said equipment. This would not be published. What we publish, we formulate a deviation request that is coming from the applicant, and we then prepare a publication of the deviation on the EASA website. So we remove any preparatory information, and the deviation request in this form needs to be understood that it's not to be used by only one applicant. With this form published and with the acceptance, when it's accepted, may be used by any other DPO electing to comply to the same function. So the deviation request will be associated to a certain detail spec section and to a certain detail spec requirements, or to a certain AMC to detail spec requirement. So by this, we will have, let's say, a level playing field between all DPOs and with the visibility of what has been already accepted and published. The deviation request published on the EASA website will come with a certain tagging, a certain reference that may be used into further certification program, further applications. When the comments are received, EASA, of course, assess the comments and then publish a final decision. The last step, EASA issues a certificate, so it's all what we are willing for is to reach a full acceptance of the declaration of design performance. So just to the DDP is a final DPO document, and it includes the very important statement of compliance of the DP holder of the third basis and the signature. And the other PCM will assess and accept the DDP. EASA issues the certificate and sends them to the DPO. We will also publish the reference on the EASA website with a list of certificates per DPOs. And this is typically done in all other domains. And at the end, the certification project will be closed by the RS Directorate, the applicant service team. And the DPO will be notified of the closure of the project. At the closure of the project, the time spent of EASA is logged, and finally, let's say all is clear from the closure. So, any question is not for now. It's a typical slide to finish. It will be again on the Slido. Please use the Slido if you have questions on the certification process. But that was in the big line. We switch to the last topic before the break. We will have a 10 minutes break after. A short view on the registration process for the ATM ANS equipment declaration of design compliance. So this presentation will cover the steps and will also cover the deviation request in context of the DDC. In the context of declaration of design compliance, they are issued by the DPO. So the attestation is the DPO attestation. EASA makes the registration of the declaration of design compliance. And we will look at the process. So there, the process is a streamlined process, and it conforms to 1768 regulation. The DPO initiates the project and will deliver the declaration of design compliance. And EASA will assess and feedback in case feedback is needed and register. So from a DPO standpoint, there is a request with a form 0.00175 to be filled and to be filled completely and sent by the DPO to the, let's say, applicant service, EASA applicant service. The DPO delivers the DDC, typically together with the form here. And having done those two, we have an open declaration project opened by the team, by the EASA team that open a declaration project. EASA assess then the content of the declaration design compliance. If it's all okay, then EASA would register. If not, EASA would feed back to the DPO, and the DPO will have to address EASA comments. And at the end, we update a register, and the registration finalize, let's say, the officialization of the Declaration of Design Compliance. The register will be available on the EASA website. So today you have no page for that. It's in preparation, but as we don't have registration yet, the page will be empty and is, let's say, we will foresee the page when the page will be filled. So the page is prepared, but we don't want to have an empty page that would call for more questions than something else. The deviation request in the context of Declaration of Design Compliance. So the deviation request, we have let's say, understood that there is an opportunity for the DPO to request deviation to the detail spec, but this should be approved before using it in the Declaration of Design Compliance. Otherwise, it would create, let's say, iterations to have it. So we propose to have it approved before using it, and as a consequence, the deviation request should be requesting before releasing and requesting the registration. But for that, we would apply exactly the same process, the one explained before, and I will come back on it with a technical letter to explain the deviation request from the DPO applicant. Here it's a deviation request from the declarant in the official words. It's a Declaration of Design Compliance, so it's deviation request from the declarant. But to support an EASA decision on the deviation request, here, in contrary with the certification context, where we have a cert program and where we know the equipment, here we have a letter to request deviation, but we don't know the equipment before we have received the details in the DDC. So we ask to have a bit more information from the applicant from the DPO, from the declarant, to have some information regarding the equipment functions, to have a bit of context to assess the requested deviation. Though the requested deviation is on the detail spec and not on the equipment on the detail spec, but we need a bit of context to support our decision, to have a decision in context. So same process applies. So we are here at the time to finish the first slot, and we are proposing a 10 minutes break. So we propose to meet again at 11:30. 11:30. Thank you. And I will put the Slido. If you have any question, I will put back the code of the Slido. So we can restart. And the topic now is to introduce the certification program, Declaration of Design Performance, DDC and SOC templates. We will do an overview of those templates. These templates are available on the website, and there will be, let's say, and we will explain a bit on this now. We will not go into the details of each document, but we will oversee those documents to give a bit of illustration. So we have 30 to 40 minutes on it. So let's start. So here you see the new website page. The website page is obviously under the ATM department, so air traffic management domain on the EASA website. And you see an ATM ANS equipment attestation. There we give a bit of information and links on this page. And if you go along the let's say the text, you would see some reference to equipment certification program, DDP, DDC, and the request of the patient, for instance, the forms, etc. So we have put there the downloads available. For those, one of the members detected an issue. We corrected it yesterday. There was just like in the text some links that were referring to the same document instead of two different. But this is fixed now, so normally you should not have experienced any error any longer. So let's start with Article 4. With the certification of equipment. So the regulation requests a certification program with a certain list of information, and here it's just an extract. In the certification program, we actually have different topics that we will present, but they formulate the intent for the demonstration of compliance. And in the, let's say, in the flow, as we have already introduced a few times today, there is a need to have a final document that is already introduced as a GM into when we talk about the demonstration of compliance with the ATM ANS equipment certification basis. The end of this flow done by the DPO in certification needs a final document that is actually an handshake with the certification program that would recap all the demonstration of compliance with reference to the life cycle data. This makes, let's say, a clear context of for the certificate and for the future of the certificate. And it also includes the statement of compliance of the DPO holder to the applicable cert basis per signature. So this is for us essential. Just to, we have some questions raised on this existence of the DDP. So the DDP, it's for us, we call it with a different name than the DDC, because to not confuse, here is a declaration of design performance in the context of certification. It contains a statement of compliance, but the final attestation in the context is certification, is a certificate. Sorry. We wanted to explain a bit the background. In the EU aviation certification system, the organization declares the compliance, and EASA assesses the compliance. EASA doesn't declare the compliance. EASA does an assessment and concur with the compliance by issuing a certificate. So we have provided CP and DDP templates. For those who have already worked on their template, we want to stress that it's not that those applicants who have already prepared. For us, it's those templates are provided to guide DPO applicants in the elaboration of their own company templates. And those documents are essential in the certification process. You have seen how they are interrelated in the certificate world. So we provided more guidance by publishing those templates on the EASA website. It shows also our expectation in terms of content for the certification document in more detailed wording. And also it would help avoid iterations in the certification project. So we consider them as to bring some efficiency in our, let's say, mode of implementing the conformity assessment framework for the certification aspects. Last but not least, again, the templates are produced for guidance. They are not mandatory. They may be used by applicants to integrate in their own template. And just to say that they are for guidance. So if we now look at the certification program, and let me share the document. Share Word. Okay. Let me be in full screen. Zoom a bit. Yes. So you see that we have put let's say some guidance with a certain list of topics that are here on the left. I will go to the table of content. So sub-program first, you see that it's we need a signature by the DPO, some checks, some approval by the DPO, typical let's say configuration control document. But then we have introduced so a list of topics. So revision history in case we have some back and forth feedback loops with EASA. Then an introduction to introduce the scope of this document when it's applied on a given certification project, and when to amend this document. Then we have the equipment description, core content. It's the start point. The applicant comes with an equipment under certification. So equipment can be system or constituent per 1768 regulation. So equipment is large. Let's say it's a large notion and can cover equipment or a constituent. Then we have the equipment identification to have the formal identification. Then we have the certification basis. And we'll come back on the deviation and limitation, an identified time schedule. If by end of the project, the schedule is a bit different, we don't ask to re-update the sub-program to reflect a newer schedule if we are at the end of the process. But the time schedule is to give an indication to EASA what are the key milestones for the applicant. Then we have resources, so the personnel and resources, a compliance demonstration, and the project data package. This illustrates how the DPO was elected to show the demonstration of compliance to the applicable surveys. We will just do a quick review. So introduction, amendment policy, equipment description. So you see again the list of embedded functions, very important. So all the functions that are related to the DS. Our regulation stress for the need of additional features, characteristic functionalities not covered by applicable detail specification that we need to know as well. If we have, imagine that we have a feature that impair the functions that are under certification, we need it's important we need to know. Then we have the architecture, how the different constituents bring, if the equipment comes with multiple constituents under one, let's say, certification project, we need to know. There was some topics for hardware, software, because they are in the detail spec as a specific generic requirement. Key performance characteristics and other info to list what is the equipment. It's really, as we explain a bit there. If there is a software assurance label to be defined, this would be phrased also into the description. In the identification, we think here the official model name, part numbering, plus the part numbering scheme, the famous anticipation of minor change here should be explained. If the DPO wants to anticipate for minor change, and wants to have that privilege to perform minor change without informing EASA a priori. The certification basis, I don't detail, you know all now with what we have defined. There is this notion of environmental qualification in case the equipment is located in a specific environment, needs to be identified because this would drive a specific demonstration in the full environment. Then we have a topic deviation. So here we stress the need, like in other domains, we stress the need to have a specific section on deviations to identify the deviations formally there. Idem for the limitations. And in case there is none, then good to say that there is no anticipated deviation. Good to say because of experience, we need that information at the time of issuing the certificate. And as soon as we know, as soon as we have a bit of context, and this should be clear when it's already known at the time of certification program. Time schedule, I gave some words. We have put some, it's really to the applicant, to DPO to provide. We just have put some ideas. Resources, the personnel in general, the clear point of contact for the project, for the agency. So we need to have the names of the people we are going to work with. And then we have the compliance demonstration. So here it's to identify in advance the means of compliance in rough ideas. We are not here doing the test campaign, but we need to know the method. So for instance, the detail spec and its AMC request a physical test to test this software in this specific environment. Then we need to identify that the means is by test and not by a review or inspection. This type of things. So this is to have a view on the and also to identify which type of life cycle data will cover which type of requirement, like a test report. So it's an overview of the life cycle data, but in association with the requirements in the sub-basis. And then we have the project's data package to have in the configuration management system of the DPO. We have they anticipate what are the different templates and lifecycle data that would be for the project, and this should be reflected as project data package. So we go through, and so yeah, I think we did the overview of the sub-program. There is some text inside that are for, so all the in each section you see some identified. So here in this template, it's to help support the DPO to establish what is expected in the content. So I would stop here the presentation of the certification program template. There is also, let's say, we hope it was helpful to publish this material, but again, it's for guidance. And I will give the floor now to José Luis. I stop here for this. Do you want to take the floor of the presentation, José Luis, for the rest?
Yes, please. And I think will be easier if I do myself. Okay, I think. Do you see the template now?
Yes.
Okay, you see the template, but I don't. Excuse me. Okay, now I see it. Before now, I will present the three templates of the declarations: the DDP, the DDC, and the statement of compliance. Declaration of design declaration of design performance, declaration of design of compliance, and the statement of compliance. Oof, sometimes it's difficult to say it, the whole sentence rather than the acronyms. I think it's worth to stress something that Anne has said, but I will repeat. Yes, these templates are guidance material, but some of the elements of the templates are already described in the guidance material, in the material that we call guidance and AMCs. So in the AMCs, you know, there are some elements that are you know, more let's say more important and recognized as an AMCs that need to be captured. But these templates are supposed to reflect that, at least for the material that we have already published. So in particular with the certification program, the template Anne has just shown is reflecting the material we have published as AMC and guidance material. So it's compatible with that. In the case of the DDP, we don't have yet any material as AMC or guidance, in the sense that the normal guidance we publish, we have only this template. The intention and the purpose is to publish this guidance in the regular format of our guidance in the next MPA that will be published in summer, and will be in line with this template. So I'm going to show you the template. It's similar to the certification program, and also some of the elements are actually the same. Okay, first, as a principle, we are provided. I will go to the terms of reference. We have provided guidance text highlighted in blue that are guidance. Texts that are not highlighted in blue are texts that can be used and we are proposing to retain in the final document submitted by the applicant. But all the blue texts are kind of guidance and elements that we are proposing to include. Okay, I think I will limit the explanation to the table of content, because I think otherwise you will start reading the text and maybe confusing, and I think will be easier. But I'll try to summarize what is the intended content to be captured in each of the items, in each of the points of the table of content. You of course can download these templates, review it, read it, and if not, if there are still items not understood or issues or questions, please bring them to the workshop, because in the workshop we want to clarify everything, and also to identify if there is any missing part or any mistake there. So revision history is the revision history of the document, so the different reviews, dates, etc. So nothing new. Introduction is also what is the intent of this document that has been already expressed. So in the case of the DDP is the document that concludes and states the compliance with the certification basis when you have applied for a certificate. So it's completed this document after the compliance demonstration activities are concluded, and is submitted to EASA before the issuing of the certificate. So that's kind of introduction that will be explained there. Name and address of the DPO. So it's the name of the DPO and address. Nothing surprising there. I think that item 4 is the one that contains some elements and requires a little bit of explanation. This is actually very similar what you should have provided in the CP already. So there is a section there that probably will be almost exactly the same, unless at the end of the certificate you need to update. But basically here what you are is including model name, you are including the part number scheme with the anticipation of minor changes as we explained. So we are expecting here to find this explanation of what are the anticipated minor changes. Also, you also need to list in this part all the functions that are covered, that are included in the equipment. Typically, are described in the detailed specifications, but it may include additional ones. So those additional ones should be also listed here. There will be also a matrix where the minor changes are captured, and this is the section that, if you remember, a couple of 1 hour ago when I was presenting the minor changes and the relationship with the part number, I mentioned that you need to register all the minor changes anticipated that are implemented into the equipment. This is the section where you will list all these minor changes, and that you have to update every time a minor change is implemented into the equipment. So you have the description of the part number scheme that, at the first place, with no implementation of any minor change when the equipment is certified, but during the lifetime of the equipment, you introduce minor changes, and each minor change has to be registered. And this is the section that has to be registered, and the DDP is update or is upgrade the version without a new DDP. It's kind of an update of the initial version. So that's a matrix, and probably that is a difference with the content of the CP. Then the certification basis, it is the same as the CP. So you need to list all the functions and the requirements that are linked to the detailed specifications, but following the taxonomy that has been explained before. But also here in the certification basis, you will have to list special conditions if there are any applicable. So, special conditions are when there are detailed specifications that cannot be complied with because of certain conditions, like, for example, novelty of technology or unconventional use of the equipment, etc. All the criteria are actually in the regulation stated in the rule. So if you are using a special condition, are part also of the certification basis and need to be specified here. In any case, that should be the same as was described or introduced in the CP. Okay, as in the CP assurance levels, there is a particular section, and even though there are in the detailed specifications requirements for the assurance levels and links to standards. Here we would like to have highlighted what has been the assurance level used for the development of the software and hardware, and a specific reference to the standards as well. Then we would like to have here another section where the performance of the equipment is described. Most of the performance requirements are also part of the detailed specifications, but here you will describe this performance if there are additional performance. Here I'm talking about accuracy, availability, or whatever type of this of performance of the equipment. Then another section is dedicated to deviations. So deviations that should have been approved by EASA and should have been requested by the applicant will be also registered here for clarity. Even though so regardless if the deviation is to the detailed specification or to its AMCs, those deviations should have been approved by in accordance with the process that Anne was explained before. Also, there will be another section about limitations that also has been captured in the CP. So here will be just basically a copy paste unless there is any change on the limitation. So any condition that may limit the performance of the equipment basically is what should be included here. Here I will mention that within the section of limitations, we are expecting if the particular equipment is only a software constituent. Here we would like to have the equipment part where this software has to be installed as a limitation. So the certificate will be allocated to the software-only part or software-only constituent, with a limitation that this software has to be installed in a certain equipment, in a certain hardware with certain operating system. And that has to be described in detail in this limitation section. As I said, if the certificate is only for software-only constituent, if it covers everything, okay, then doesn't need to be described in the limitations. Then compliance demonstration. Here in the compliance demonstration, what we are expecting to receive here is a list of references to the full body of demonstration. So here I'm talking about test, qualification reports, also reference to the compliance, certification program to the CP. Also, any safety report, that has been done. So, for example, failure mode effect analysis or any type of analysis report. Also, references to the service manuals, to the instructions manuals, to the operating manuals or the maintenance manuals are also included here in this section. Then another section that will be a very small and brief section about the marking. So what is the type of label and marking if that will be used for the equipment? Obviously, when this is it will be kind of the template of the marking. And this section, the next one, is also an important section for us that we would like to have it here. It's a pre-filled template of the EASA release form. As you should know, the EASA release form is a form that accompanies every element, every single equipment manufacturer. So it's not about the design, it's about a single element that has been manufactured after the design is approved. Here, what we have is a pre-filled template. Not every element of the template can be filled at that moment because the final EASA release form is associated with one particular and a specific item. But at least most of the fields are common, so we would like to have all the fields filled in this section. I think there are, to mention a few fields that cannot be is the serial number, because the serial number will be associated to a particular and individual item, the signature and the date of production. Of course, this is it still is about the design, so we don't have that information. But all the rest, elements of the EASA release form can be pre-filled at that moment. And that is something we are suggesting as well to include here, because we will facilitate everything afterwards. And then the final declaration of compliance. Here is a statement that basically says that the equipment has been designed in accordance or in compliance with the regulation, that has been designed in accordance with the certification program, also with the reference to the certification program that has been included into the section 9, and basically it, and also a date and a signature by the authorized representative of the DPO. So the authorized representative of the DPO typically will be the accountable manager, but sometimes could be delegated to someone else. But that should be clearly defined in the DPO procedures. So when we approve the DPO as organization, should also identify clearly who has to or who has the authority to sign this declaration of compliance. And that's it. That's it basically in a very brief and in a nutshell, what is the content of the different sections. As I said before, I suggest you to download the document, download the templates, read it, and have ready your concerns, your questions for the workshop. So now let me go back, because now I will present the other two templates. The DDC, so decline of design compliance. Again, the template has been provided for easiness for you to provide the information, and also for efficiency purposes for us also to process the information. DPO holder may develop its own template, as mentioned before. So this is the same for the DDC as from the DDP and CP. But we recommend to use it, or at least to organize in the similar manner. So you use your own template, but please use organize in a similar manner with the similar content. So let me open the DDC template, which is not very different to the DDP, actually. It contains more or less the same, only that in several cases or in several sections, there are some little differences. So, for example, revision will be the same. It's the revision history of the document. Introduction, okay, the introduction here is a bit different. Still is an introduction of the document, the purpose of the document, but now here has to talk about that this is a declaration linked to an equipment subject to Article 5 rather than Article 4 as before. But nothing else. The name and address of the DPO, that's basically the same content as before. Equipment description and identification here is the same. We are expecting the same elements. So we are expecting the model name, the part number scheme, the description, the detailed description of the minor changes anticipated, all the functions that are covered by the equipment, as well as the matrix that capture the minor changes when these minor changes are implemented. So you will have also you will issue a first declaration, the first version of the declaration, and you will need to update this declaration as you implement the minor changes anticipated, updating this section. The rest will remain the same. Attestation basis, here we don't have a certification basis, we have the attestation basis, which is built with the requirements in the detailed specifications about the functions that are subject to Article 5, to the declaration, but also the equipment may include additional functions that may be subject to the statement of compliance. That should be also listed here. But as in the case of the certification, one single attestation will be associated to the equipment. So in this case, will be a declaration. So if the declaration contains functions that subject to declaration, but subject to the statement of compliance, will be considered or will be included all together here. In the attestation basis, again, all the special conditions need to be also listed. What else? And also there is a subsection in the attestation basis about the assurance level use to develop software and to develop the hardware components of the equipment. As in the certification, there is a section about the performance of the equipment that typically, as I mentioned before, are capturing the detailed specifications, but additional performance can be described here. Deviations. Also, there is a section about deviations. Although the regulation is not fully explicit on the deviations need to be approved before declaring here. For efficiency purposes, we are recommending to have the deviations approved, because otherwise EASA will have to check and it will take longer to process the declaration. So if those deviations has been already submitted to EASA and approved by EASA, the process of this declaration will be much faster and efficient. So that's why we are also kind of requiring or encouraging to have the deviations approved prior to the declaration. Limitations, similar as before in the certificate, is basically any conditions that limit the performance of the equipment has to be listed here. And as I mentioned for the certification, when we are talking about declaration of a software only constituents, the equipment, hardware, or operating system, etc., where this software will be installed, need to be listed here as limitations and need to be described in detail. Compliance demonstration section is the same. It's a list of references to the documents. I don't go through the list of documents as I mentioned before, but that's basically the same. Test reports, qualification reports, any safety assessment, any safety analysis done, etc. A marking if appropriate, and then again a release form template pre-filled. There are, as I mentioned, is the same as before. So for the production, there will be a need, or there is an obligation to issue a release form associated or link with each item, with each article manufacturer based on the same design, and it will require this form to be released and to be signed. Most of the elements can be filled at the moment of the design. Only a few of them will be blanked, linked basically to the file and item produced, serial number, date of production and signature, etc. And finally, a declaration of compliance. Here, the declaration of compliance is a little bit different to the design of the declaration of design performance, but more or less serve the same purpose. It's a statement where the DPO declares that the equipment has been developed in accordance with regulation. It complies with the attestation basis that you have described in section 5. Etc., etc. The text is provided there, so you don't have to basically think about what type of text these declarations need to be. And then signature and date. So you see quite similar. There are a few differences, of course, because the involvement of EASA in the declaration is at the end, not from the beginning. Those are the things are captured there. And finally, the statement of compliance. Okay, for the statement of compliance, we have more material published in the ANC, in the already published ANC and guidance material. But in any case, we provided a template in line with that material. And this template is quite similar to the previous ones that I mentioned. So I will show you now. Big difference, of course, is that the obligation for the statement of compliance is on the ANSP, but you know that it can be delegated to a DPO holder. So a DPO may accept that and issue the statement of compliance. Of course, again, this is a template. It's a proposal of EASA. You can use a different template, but again, the content should be the same. We recommend again to use this one, or at least to organize the information in the same manner. And let me show you the statement of compliance template, which is very similar. Again, in blue text, there are guidance. You should delete at the end, and then the table of content. The table of content, you will see that is very different. So we have a revision history of the document, an introduction explaining what is this statement of compliance, name and an address of the ANSP, if it is the ANSP who is issuing this statement of compliance, or the DPO, or both actually. I think it's both actually. Let me check. If it is signed by the DPO, also need to include the address of the ANSP. Okay, I will stop the link. My computer is. Yes, it provides also both names. What else? Yes, a description of the equipment and the identification of the equipment. Here we have the same, the model name, the part numbers, all functions that are included in the equipment, as previously mentioned. The change description, the minor changes description as well, should be described here. At the attestation basis is linked to the requirements in the detailed specifications, plus the assurance levels that we are also asking to include. The rated performance, so basically the performance that are being confirmed during the compliance demonstrations, that typically refer to the detailed specifications, but additional ones can be included. And then deviations, limitations. I mentioned here on the deviations, just to mention that deviation of the statement of compliance requires the approval of the competent authority, not of EASA. So again, a recommendation is that the deviations are approved before issuing the statement of compliance with the competent authority, because it will issue the process by the competent authority. But actually, the regulation doesn't require that. But it will issue the acceptance of that. Then limitations, of course, the same. Any conditions that limit the performance of the equipment should be included here. And then in the compliance demonstrations, just also references to the demonstrations documents that have that capture these demonstrations. Marking again is a template or a prototype of the marking. And in the case, and this section 11, is only in the case that the statement of compliance is issued by the DPO. Also, we are recommending to include an EASA release form. As you know, there is no requirement in the regulation that requires this form, but we are recommended to have the same processes for this type of equipment developed by the DPOs. If there is no DPO involved here in the declaration, in the statement of compliance, of course, the EASA release form is not issued by the NSP because they cannot do it. So this section will be left blank. And finally, the statement of compliance, which we are also proposing some text, so you don't need to amend anything there. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the three templates. Just a few words to summarize that these templates are quite similar, as you have seen. These templates declares basically the compliance of equipment, the model name and the part number with the detailed specifications, or more generally with the attestation basis, in the case of certification declaration and the statement of compliance. Two of these declarations are always issued by the DPO. So the declaration of design performance and the declaration of design compliance are issued by the DPO. The statement of compliance is issued by the NSP, or in the case that is delegated to a DPO, by the DPO. Many fields are quite similar and equivalent. So there is a high level of similarity as you can you have observed. Okay, of course, the data should be accurate as much as possible. And two elements that are important are always the date and the signature, because that takes the responsibility of the information provided into those declarations. And I stop here, and I pass the floor to my colleagues on the room.
Thank you, José Luis. So the last topic is about the workshop. Maybe Emmanuel, you want to introduce the workshop coming in June 23-24.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you also, José Luis, for the good presentations this morning. I really hope that it has served as an appetizer for the audience. I was monitoring also the slide of questions, and I believe it has raised some attention. Considering this expectation, we have organized the workshop on conformity assessment in June, completely on the 23rd, 24th of June. You have the details for the workshop in the EASA webpage. You have also some of them here on this slide. And you can see that the intention is to address in detail some of the topics anticipated today, but having enough time to engage in appropriate discussions, changing with all of the attendees. And also the colleagues have prepared even some events in the afternoon or evening, even after the workshop on the first day, that will also allow for both ways for the attendees to the workshop and for the ASA team working on design, production, organization approvals, and working on equipment to interact and to network, to have contact with the industry at large. So we have big expectations for these 2 days in June. The registration is open. We know that there are already quite a few registrations, and the spaces are limited because of the capacity of the room hosting the event. So we really recommend you to register if you're interested in the topic and in going into further discussions. Of course, we will try to make the material from the workshop also available as far as possible, but that would not be the same as having the possibility to engage directly and discuss along those topics covered in the agenda. Nothing else on my side. Thank you very much, and also thank you for all the questions placed in Slido, which will help us to prepare this workshop. Thank you very much. Maybe on the Slido, or we were just discussing that we will not close immediately the Slido for questions and answers. So you have some time also to reflect on the webinar content and place some additional questions. As said, it will be a very important input in preparation of the workshop. So for sure, we will keep it open today, and most probably until the end of this week, the Slido will be open. At some point, we will, of course, close it and consolidate the list of questions and comments. Thank you very much then, also for the questions, comments we will place until it is closed in the next days.
Yes. So we repeat here the coordinates. We will treat, let's say, we will look at all questions that have been raised, but if you could put your name, company name, to give a bit of context, it's also useful sometimes to better understand the questions. If it's from a DPO perspective, from an NSP perspective, etc. So it could be useful to have also your name and company name. Regarding the time, we still have 10 minutes. Maybe we could have a look through those that are closely related to the presentation. We hope that this, let's say that it was of interest.
We have the voting for the questions. Have placed some of them at the top of the list. So the most voted question with 14 votes currently is: what would be the part number for a software product?
Okay, so a software product can have a part number too. Typically, a software is identified with, let's say, an overall software build and the overall software component identification, which can be called the software part number, and on which we could also imagine some possibilities to have minor changes to a software and major changes to a software component in the same logic than than an equipment having the full function. In that case, we would call the software, it's a constituent of the function, of the DS function. It's one constituent. And we would identify the software as a, let's say, the notion of that it is a constituent, not the complete function, complete DS function. There will be an identification in the remark field, so that it's clear.
Thank you. Second question we have in the list is more on the regulatory side, and it's about the DSs and whether they could be made available in a format that can be directly imported via requirements tool. Maybe here we can also explain the taxonomy and the introduction of the taxonomy. It might facilitate already having more consistent headings. So would you
come back on the taxonomy?
If you can just explain briefly the taxonomy and where it is available.
Yes, so the taxonomy is published today on the website where we had the page. Let me switch just to show you quickly this one. Sure. I missed the presentation too. Okay. Okay, so the taxonomy was presented on this slide. So we will have a detailed spec that will have the same section than today, but inside the detailed spec we would have this taxonomy. The taxonomy is today, the anticipated taxonomy is today published on the EASA website, on the website page, equipment attestation. In the downloads, you will see taxonomy. And it's guidance for taxonomy. Today it's a guidance, but it's useful at the first application of a certification project in the sub-program, in the DDP. So it will be used immediately, but it will be officially inside the detailed specification at the issue 2 time. But this taxonomy has been agreed with Brian Jolie leading the rulemaking 744 technical side.
The next question is about the expectation of changes, the type of changes to be included in the certification program of DDP. And I read the question, is only the type of change, as an example, bug fix, minor feature change, to be anticipated at the certification program or the specific change itself? Whether it's the type of change or whether all changes need to be listed in anticipation.
It's a type of change. It's a type of change, not the change itself, but with classification criteria that are explained. So the applicant comes with a procedure, and with the procedure, it will have a method to classify. In the equipment side, in the equipment project side, then the DPO explains what is anticipated as detailed criteria for this specific equipment. So we imagine that there could be more refined criteria for a VCS, a voice communication system, compared to other criteria for flight data processing equipment. So there could be a refinement on the type of what is let's say minor major classification, but it's not a predefined change. But there could be also predefined change. I just say like we already anticipate 4 family of equipment, family blue, family red, family black, white, and if those difference between the family are just like color, it could be seen as a minor criteria, and then it could be anticipated too. So it's really up to the DPO to bring how his structure is anticipated minor change with certain criteria.
Thank you, Anne. I suppose you raised your hand. Would you want to complement?
I think has been addressed by Anne. I was about to say that the specific changes at the time of the certification program are not needed, but then need to be registered. And as I mentioned in the 3 different templates, we have a section that need to be updated with those specific changes.
Okay, thank you, José Luis. I think we still have time for a couple of questions more. The next one in the list is in cases an ATM system has multiple vendor components, does EASA also expect a separate certificate for the overall integrated system?
It depends. So we have the complete function of the DS. If we talk the system is a complete function of the DS, I would say yes. So the development of the DS of the function that is under the DS require a certificate for that function. We are not covering the integration of the system of the DS function into the final functional system. This we don't integrate that. It's not to be covered by a certificate. But what is under a DS function is to be covered by the certificate. So if a company comes with different constituent of a DS function, we also, and that company is the developer of the final function, DS function, then we expect that the company comes with a request for certification for the complete DS function. The one that does a complete DS function is the one that needs to apply for the certificate. Of course, it's much easier to work by a true example than large words. It's when we apply when we apply the regulation into a certification project, this can be discussed, or this can be discussed at the time of DPO approval too. To be more specific to the case brought.
Thank you, Anne. And maybe the last question is about how do you define minor changes to equipment? So maybe, José Luis, if we look at AMC GM, would you be able to provide a first answer to this question?
Yes, but I don't know it by heart. As I mentioned, the criteria are laid down in AMCs. The main notion is that when you require a re-verification of the equipment after the change is what we consider major. You have the AMC is DPO.OR.B005B. I'm sorry, but that's okay. That's a reference. So you have the procedure there. You have the criteria. Those criteria are high level. So we are expecting the DPO to get this high level criteria and apply for the DPO. So for example, it says that the changes classify as major when new concept of operation of the equipment is introduced. So new technologies or techniques in the development of this equipment are introduced in the design or verification. Changes into the equipment that significantly impacts the functions and therefore requires a full re-verification, as well as changes to the software that impact a software function, impact significantly software functions and induce a full re-verification. And there are another list of items. So I think the best way is that you go there to the AMC, read the AMC, and this is a point that will be addressed during the workshop.
Thank you very much, José Luis. And now we have got to the end of our session. We cannot take more questions on board today, but as said before, we will consider all of them in preparation of the workshop, and the team will be available to answer this, many others, during the workshop itself. Thank you again, and please, report back to you.
Yes, and I was going to add that at the workshop, there will be a Q&A at the end of the presentations, in each presentation, so it will be more comfortable for having, let's say, more exchange, more live exchange, and adequate, let's say, addressing the question. So thank you very much for this today attendance. So we reach a high level of attendance, and we are very glad that you could connect. We hope that was an helpful first start with the webinar, and we are looking forward for more, let's say, exchange at the workshop time. Thank you. Thanks all for connecting.